Let's go ahead and call the Operations Committee meeting together. First, we're going to start with a prayer by Chairman Wandale and a pledge by Commissioner Yeager.
Thank you. Heavenly Father, we come to you again this evening in sincere appreciation of this opportunity to represent our county and do things in ways that you will lead us and guide us and provide us the grace that we need. Lord, we ask you to watch over those and help those that are sick and at home. We have a couple of commissioners that have been in accidents and under health issues, and we would like for you to reach out to them and touch them, heal them, Lord, with your precious hands. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First, we need approval of the agenda.
Motion approved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the agenda as submitted? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Mayor Frank.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item I have is a resolution before you, 1901-727. This is for Anderson County to join a cooperative effort between Anderson, Campbell, and Union counties in the planning of a bike trail system. And I mentioned this to you at last month's meeting in your agenda packet as some of the information supporting this. This would also be presented to Campbell County's legislative body as well as Union County's legislative body. I don't know when Union County is going to hear it, but E.L. Morton is taking it to he's in a workshop tonight with his commission and will be taking it Monday evening. And then I haven't heard back yet when Mayor Bailey is taking his to his commission.
I'll move to approve.
Second. Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And then last month, I brought a resolution to you in support of construction and operation of a new U.S. Department of Energy facility in central Bear Creek Valley near Y-12. At the request of a commissioner, I did pull that from the agenda so that there could be the opportunity for a public comment period, and the workshop that was held by County Commission Vice Chairman of Commission Commissioner Creasy chaired that meeting and did a great job, and there was a lot of community input. I also understand that the resolution I presented to you mirrored the language of Roane County, and I now understand with new elected commissioners, they're looking at possibly rescinding that. My purpose in bringing this resolution forward to you is not to create any kind of controversy. I'm more than willing to pull it back if we don't want to make any kind of comment on it, or if you want to amend it. My main concern is that we do get cleanup in that area. And as someone who has lived here my entire life, a lot of folks don't know and realize, but it was actually my father who went and facilitated the Freedom of Information Act request that was able to finally have some accountability on unaccounted for mercury in our community. So I'm very cognizant and very concerned about that, and I've been an advocate since I've been mayor for expedited cleanup. When folks from DOE have actually come from Washington, you know, I've said we stand ready and willing here in our county to get this done faster because I've watched this linger my entire lifetime. And so my main focus is that we do it and we get it done. I would like to be able to say before I pass away we cleaned it all up. And I think the Department of the Department of Environment and Conservation, they handed out a fact sheet that was at our workshop. The things they are looking out for on our behalf, I think, are the right things. If I were king for a day and could make something happen, it would be to put DOE and TDEC in a room and get these details hammered out over a long retreat weekend. Instead of, we've been following this issue. I know I've been following this issue for 6 years that I've been mayor. There's been a lot of opportunity for input. There have been a lot of discussions. There's been a lot of back and forth in public forums. And so my goal in presenting this is, again, not to be divisive. So at your pleasure, what you would like to do with the resolution, I'm happy to pull it, or if you want to amend, or if you want to come back in another 30 days with it's Anderson County's desire to see our community cleaned up. I know that I was sent, as well as the commissioners, a letter from a new organization that, where they wrote Mr. Japp at DOE, and some of the arguments they are making in that particular letter, for instance, are about what statute this landfill is being constructed under. They are arguing that this is not a remedial effort. This is a new landfill. Those are things that, from where I'm standing, those are decisions that are made in Washington, D.C., and if we want to change the process, we can go about changing the process. But my concern from a community member is that we get the community cleaned up. And so some of the things in there, I think we're kind of arguing over environmental processes that maybe are not part of this, but I'm glad to see a renewed focus on cleaning up our community. And so that's what I'm most proud of, I guess, in all of these discussions.
Okay. I think we've got actually 3 people that want to speak.
Okay.
We've got a representative from Oak Ridge City Council, Amy Fitzgerald, and then we have, she wants to speak, don't she, Amy?
Did you want to speak, Amy?
I can say a couple words.
Okay.
Just to clarify.
I advise the chairman that you need to go to the city council meeting that they're having here in a few minutes, and so that's the reason we asked that you come first if you wanted to discuss.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman, and I want to say thank you to Mayor Frank because she's very eloquently articulated a lot of the issues I think we're facing right now. I think everybody in the room and everybody in Anderson County and Oak Ridge are looking forward to expediting the cleanup. I wanted to remind you or to point out that this is something that the city of Oak Ridge has also been studying for, at least since 2014, when the proposal first came out to establish a second landfill. And I actually went back and took a look when they endorsed the existing landfill that's out there right now back in 1999, and Walt Brown was mayor at that time. And one of the things that they were told at the time, and I think a lot of people thought, and maybe even DOE, that was going to be the only landfill that they were going to need. And unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, that's not the case. So over the past, several years, there have been a number of reports looked at, the, different versions of the feasibility study that DOE has issued. Mayor Frank mentioned the back and forth with TDEC in terms of taking a look at some of the issues related to that. City Council back in July, and I think we sent City Manager Watson's letters and communications, but we've asked a variety of questions, and many of those are the ones that the regulators have asked. Many of those are the ones that came out last week in terms of the mercury disposal and how that's going to be handled. How is the material going to be characterized? And so City Council on December the 8th basically as their comments, they transmitted all those documents and questions, and we had a community impact assessment prepared a couple years ago, taking a look at how do you deal with some of these issues related to negative perception and some of those things that's kind of difficult to quantify. So basically what City Council did is that they felt that until, we get the answers and get the information, that we don't feel that we can achieve the community acceptance. That's one of the 9 criteria that DOE is supposed to consider. So we're very much interested in learning more about the mercury issues, how that's going to be disposed. One of the things that, and this is Amy speaking, the existing capacity that's in the landfill now, they're saying that they've got capacity, I think, until about 2024, but is it possible for them, while they're doing the studies on the mercury and some of these other things, that the material that's going in there right now, could they start shipping that out west in the contracts they've already got in place? There's already the Nevada test site, there's a site in Texas, and there's a site in Utah, all of which are licensed facilities that can accept this material. So the bottom line is City Council has not opposed it, City Council has not endorsed it, but in order to transmit, we did transmit the comments and the questions that as a result of our workshop we had, and we're looking forward to hearing more about the proposal before we can go on record and saying we think this is a good thing for the community. Thank you.
Can I ask, Mr. Chairman, can I ask Ms. Amy Fitzgerald a question?
Yeah.
Have your communications and the city's communications been with our U.S. representative and our congressional members and state members?
We transmitted all our comments. We've kept them in the communication loop. We've talked a number of times. In particular, Congressman Fleischman has a science advisor named Minsu. She's actually going to be the speaker in the East Tennessee Environmental Business Association meeting, I think, next week. And we, in particular, tried to keep her in the loop because it is, there's a lot of technical questions involved and needs some assistance in, getting the answers addressed. One thing I did want to mention, in both the Roane County and the proposed resolution, there's a reference to elemental mercury, and part of our research, we found out that if you go back and you can Google it, it's called the Mercury Export Act of, I think, 2008 or 2009, but it actually prohibits the disposal, the storage of mercury at Y12, elemental mercury. And DOE issued back in July, I think, an RFP looking for a location or anyone that would be willing to take title to this mercury. So that's one of the questions that we asked, is the mercury that's in the buildings is, there's a lot of different forms of it. But the elemental mercury itself, unless Congress takes action, is not currently legal to be stored at Y12. So DOE, DOE, they have to, so anyway, I'm kind of getting off a little bit, but that's one of the references to the elemental mercury. They still do not have, as far as I know, a location, a long-term location to keep that. So anyway.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Brad?
I'm Brad Stevenson with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. I'm also a resident of Oak Ridge, 105 Amanda Drive, where I've lived since 1998. Previously lived in Clinton from 1994 until 1998. I'd like to sort of second everything that both our previous speakers have said. Like Mayor Frank, TDEC certainly wants to see cleanup expedited on the Oak Ridge Reservation. That's our number one concern. Like Ms. Fitzgerald with the city of Oak Ridge said, we do have a lot of concerns, and those concerns have not really been addressed to the state's satisfaction, such that as currently proposed, that we can support the proposed plan until those issues get resolved. For the folks who were not here last week, in the interest of time, I would just point you to the state's fact sheet that was referenced earlier, and we have a few copies up here that for anyone who would like to see that. There are basically 7 key concerns, and I won't go through all of those right now, but I just wanted to clarify one thing that we didn't really address last week, and I know the commissioners have a copy of this map, but for the folks in the audience, I have a few extra copies. But 2 of the sites that DOE is evaluating right now are in Roane County, and 2 are in Anderson County. And there is no final decision yet on which site this proposed landfill could end up occupying. DOE representatives have stated publicly recently that they consider each of these sites equally viable, that they could engineer a facility that would be protective at any one of these locations. One of those sites in particular was studied a few years back and proved to have significant challenges similar to the site that we're evaluating now, with shallow groundwater, lots of streams that would cross the site, potentially requiring drainage features underneath a future landfill. And state concerns about that site is really what encouraged DOE to look at this other site just across the county line in Roane County. But again, all of those sites are still on the table officially in this process until one is selected. I can go into more detail about that if necessary, but just wanted to make sure County Commission was aware. It's not certain yet which county this landfill would even end up in. There have been, I'll say, a fair number of public comments that DOE has received during the public comment period suggesting that DOE consider picking a site that's closer to what they call the existing waste disposal footprint. In other words, closer back to Y-12, not out in the relatively clean green space. And DOE might decide based on that public input to choose one of these sites in Anderson County. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can, but I just wanted to make sure that information was out there.
Commissioner?
Yeah, the question I have is because I still haven't got an answer, and maybe you can answer this. In your fact sheet, okay, it talks about the fact that state and EPA need to agree on legal requirements. And Dave Adler at the meeting we had made a very point-blank statement that they cannot move ahead without TDAC and EPA approval. Is that not true?
That is true to a point. The laws that are out there, both federal and state, do have potential within them for exemptions and waivers, and that would also require state and EPA approval. Now, that's in theory. Now, actually, the federal facility agreement that's in place between the state, EPA, and DOE does have a clause in it that would allow DOE to proceed without state approval and have only EPA approve it. And without going into the details of how our dispute process works, that is one option that DOE could employ if we do not agree with the first draft of their record of decision. It is actually possible they could proceed.
I appreciate your answer, because one of my big concerns was that if you guys approved it, I have great faith that they're doing it. If there's a way that it can happen without state approval, I'm less optimistic, I guess would be the term to use. Thank you.
Certainly.
Commissioner Dittenberg?
Mr. Stevenson, excuse me, the existing buildings that were discussed last meeting that contain a lot of the mercury, it just occurred to me with all the rain that we're having these days, those buildings have some watershed from the atmosphere with the rain, et cetera. Are those drainage systems capped off in any way to keep that from going into the ground?
I'm not the expert on the Y-12 facilities. I know that we have a huge problem with mercury from those facilities getting into the groundwater and East Fork of Poplar Creek every day. That's the reason this Outfall 200 construction is underway now, is to try to minimize the amount that goes downstream through the city of Oak Ridge. And in particular, the goal was to get that in place before large-scale demolition of these mercury-containing facilities happens, kind of as a safety net, because it seems like anytime activity happens out there, mercury moves and ends up in the stream, whether it's from vibrations or just flowing down existing drainages and sewers and so forth. There's just a tremendous volume of mercury already in the soil.
No, and you did say at the last workshop that I guess an estimation or the number that, when I asked the question as to how much did you think had already gone into the ground, was 700,000 tons?
700,000 pounds is DOE's latest number. They originally said there were about 2 million pounds of mercury unaccounted for, and now they have revised that number down to only 700,000 pounds.
Gee, no, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Stevenson?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mark McBride.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark McBride, 954 West Outer Drive in Oak Ridge. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight, and again, let me thank you for your request for an extension to the comment period and for holding the public meeting. I think these are having a very positive impact on the process. I wasn't aware until Mayor Frank mentioned it tonight that her father was the one that opened the door to help people understand the scope of the mercury problem and that pollution. My appreciation to her father and to her family for doing this, and I share her interest in getting the cleanup just moving as quickly as we can. And from my point of view, there are two things that are missing from this proposal. Number one, there's economic balance, and I've gone to the trouble of giving you folks and giving DOE a list of examples of things they can do which don't take much time at all to balance the economic burden of having the waste. The second problem I have is in what I said at the meeting, stewardship, and that comes down to long-term funding. If I can just be, perfectly blunt about it. Once that stuff gets in the ground, DOE is going to want to forget it. That's just the way the budget process works within the Department of Energy. I'm not talking about 2 years from now, 5 years, but when that stuff's in the ground for 20, 30, 50 years, what kind of priority do you think will be afforded to your grandchildren and their grandchildren on this? It won't be much, unless there is accountability, external accountability of some type that gets DOE's attention. Now, to me, that boils down to a state oversight with full shutdown authority, or if DOE doesn't like that, giving elected bodies like you, Roane County, and the City Council full shutdown authority over that operation into the future, so that if things go off the tracks and DOE stops taking care of it, you have an alternative. Now, to make things like that happen, the Assistant Secretary can make a commitment like that. It's that quick. It doesn't have to hold up anything. But you have to get the Assistant Secretary's attention because she's very busy. So what I suggested is that you, A, reject the current proposal. That'll get her attention. And B, invite her to come down here and talk about the impact on Anderson County future. Now, I think both of those things will allow her to focus on the issue, and like I said, she can make this happen virtually overnight. She can make both of these commitments happen. She has that authority. Now, the question about Congressman Fleischman, I think is an excellent road to go down, but I think to help all of that come together, to help the congressman put his oar in the water, to help people focus to a common conclusion to, as Mayor Frank suggests, get the cleanup going and make sure that it moves as fast as possible. I think it starts with you and the City Council saying, wait a minute, we need these two essential things added to this proposal. Now, I told you, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to criticize the commission if they don't, nor am I going to criticize the council if they decide not to do this, because it's not your responsibility ultimately for that waste. DOE's the person, the group, the organization that should be wanting to have this thing under full state regulation so that they, in the future, the Department of Energy, has the budget priority so they can get the money to take care of this stuff in the future. They should want to have state oversight, but they don't see it that way, at least not yet. Again, thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other comments?
Good evening, sirs and lady. My name's Robert Kennedy. I reside at 209 Whippoorwill Drive. I'm chairman of EQUAB. You know, you can't get something clean without getting something else dirty. It's basic thermodynamics. However, you can get a lot of things dirty without getting anything clean, which is what's going on now. EQUAB strongly supports expedited cleanup, and we strongly oppose kicking this can down the road. Cleanup and sending things out west and money are not an either-or proposition, as DOE insinuates. And it's been said this is an Oak Ridge problem because, you know, the waste was generated in Oak Ridge and Oak Ridge jobs. This is not Oak Ridge's problem. This is America's problem. So we can send that stuff across the country. There's no moral reprobation in that. Until you and City Council, Oak Ridge City Council, and our citizens get proper answers to the questions we've already posed, and we've had zero response so far since July. Until that happens, you are free to withhold your acceptance, as DOE itself has withheld open acceptance criteria. Thank you so much for your time tonight and bird-dogging this issue.
Anyone else? You know, we had a workshop the other night, and we really wished it could have been televised because we had so many people that made so many good comments. And one of the issues that came about is, why have we allowed this situation to get where it's at now? And one of the comments that I made is I actually work for a private corporation that manufactures chlorine, and mercury is used to manufacture that. This corporation has a very large footprint, and everything there, all their water runoff is all run into their own sewer system. Everything there actually goes to a filter process. That water is stored in silos. Then it goes to a filter process that actually cleans all the mercury out. And then that's shipped off, and then that water is actually put back into the river because it's so clean. So how have we allowed the Department of Energy to put so much mercury into the ground when a private corporation has got all these guidelines they have to do, and all they're doing is producing chlorine? So, you know, what the decision that we make here tonight is going to be for our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, that we don't allow this type of thing. You know, what can we do as a governing body to put some input on this? We shouldn't really be forced with this issue that we're having to deal with about all this mercury. That's what I'm saying, is they should have had the forethought to go ahead and have these procedures. But, Mayor?
Oh, I'll just, since it was, I just
Oh.
was coming back to the podium.
Okay, so, Commissioner?
Well, when you talk about this, why did we let it happen? You can keep in mind that back when we were in high school, okay, back when all these plants were going to their biggest production they ever had, mercury was routinely taken into schools, and we got to play with it in our hands. There was just no perception that liquid mercury was a hazard. They just didn't get that next step that it reacts with something else and turns into compounds that are incredibly dangerous. Okay, and that's where we were. That's where science was. Mercury was not a problem, and mercury was critical to some of the operations at Y-12 to supply our nuclear weapons capability. okay? I can't go into details of what that's all about, but I can say that, okay? Mercury was critical to the function of the Y-12 plant and their products that supported national security. So that's kind of how we got there. And what I did want to, and before you even said that, I want to say, I have two concerns about this resolution, okay? One is, right now, waste staying in the same place may be substantially more likely to be leaked into the environment than if we start some kind of cleanup. So I'm really concerned about anything that causes a substantial delay of years because we don't start the cleanup. This stuff is all over the place. It's in dirt. It's all over the place. And as it rains, I'm sorry, rains come off roofs, go down gutters, and that's not all filtered. It's not anywhere near as tight as the requirements you're talking about. And I don't see that happening, okay? That's why I want to get this stuff out. I'm also really concerned, the mercury just has to be handled properly, okay? And in our resolution, okay, it states building debris and minimally contaminated soil is what's going in there, while elemental mercury will be disposed of off-site. Now I find out that it is illegal to store liquid mercury at Y-12. How do you assemble it for transport if you can't store it somehow? So we got some things that just have to be addressed. And as to state oversight, if 40 years from now they decide they're not overlooking the landfill that's now filled, if the state decides that it's not being run right, they're going to shut it down? How do you shut down a filled landfill? I can understand that during the process you're filling it, you could stop operations, but once it's filled, you have to have a commitment that it's going to be watched over, and primarily it's the same thing required by the existing landfills. Any water that comes through that material goes into a special drainage system that's collected and has to be handled as hazardous waste. Okay, in the design to make that happen is pretty darn sufficient. I didn't really mean to get that excited. And so I have great confidence that once this stuff is all stored and contained and all the leachate that comes off it is being very carefully monitored, as long as that continues, and we found with the landfills we've done the last 16 years that we're just not getting anything that's contaminated coming through the system, okay? We're just not finding contaminants in that leachate. I'd like to think that would continue. Now, the existing landfill doesn't have the mercury that we're talking about going into this one. Okay, so we wouldn't expect mercury to show up if we're not putting very much there, okay? But that's why I feel it's so important that the mercury has got to be handled right. And we've seen all this stuff, but even in our resolution, it basically says the elemental mercury is all going to be disposed of off-site. And I'm not convinced that that's what it's going to say. In fact, we don't know what the acceptance criteria for what goes into this thing is. So as much as I hate to see a delay, we just got to make sure this mercury thing is being handled right. And if it is, then I'm very confident this will not be a hazard to the environment and the people, our county, or the state of Tennessee, for that matter. I also agree with the fact that this is not an Oak Ridge problem. This is a United States problem. And so if some of this stuff can be shipped to places that really want it, I think that needs to be at least one of the alternatives for the more hazardous stuff. And that means we got to figure out a way that we can collect and store liquid mercury until it can be shipped off. That's got to get fixed. So that's where I am on this. I can't vote for this the way it is because it assumes that all the stuff is being taken care of, and we haven't been provided with documents that even show the acceptance criteria for what's going to go in this yet, nor do we have the confidence level I want for how it's going to be controlled once it's there. I've looked at the design. I worked in that area in part of my career in waste and emergency management at the Y-12 and K-25 and the lab. So I feel that the landfill is, the way it's designed is a good design, but it has to be monitored forever. And so just was brought up by one of our citizens, one of my neighbors, We have to have long-term funding. It doesn't take a lot. It takes some scientists that are going to watch the leachate come out of these things and ensure that the covers are not allowed to erode. Okay, they have to stay in place. We have to make sure it stays right. We do have some seismic activity around here, but I think where we are there in the way that they use clay is very malleable, and even if the ground moves around a little bit, the clay reseals. And so I feel comfortable with the way that it's sealed, but it still has to be monitored to make sure there's no erosion of the cover and that the leachate continues to be properly analyzed for anything that we determine is hazardous to the environment. We don't let it get away. That's where I am right now. I can't support this the way it's drafted because
Mr. Chairman?
It makes assumptions. If all these things were true, I'd be absolutely in support of this.
Would it be appropriate for me to just withdraw this from the agenda and continue to let the regulators have their conversations and make their agreement? Would that be acceptable to the committee? That's the sense I'm getting.
I would think so. I think Commissioner Creasy has a statement.
Yeah, I want to commend you and your family for, you know the history of how this came about to begin with in 1983. You
Yes.
remember very well, and I remember very well.
Yeah.
And I commend your family, as Martin McBride said earlier. And what I'd like to see, and if the commission is agreeable, I would like for us to decide if we want to make a statement and work with the mayor so that she can sign that statement and have it to be the statement of Anderson County if we decide to make one. But I think the mayor's input is very important on this, and she knows the history very well.
Well, and I understand as well, Department of Energy, Oak Ridge and Anderson County helped win the war and save a lot of lives. And there were different environmental standards back in the day. There were different protocols. I understand that. And so we're working through all of those legacy issues. And I know Chairman Wandell knows this from attending the ECA meetings. A lot of communities aren't built like we are. We're actually the population is right here in the center of the activities, and the activities are still going on. I don't want us as a county to also jeopardize our relationship with the Department of Energy. DOE provides a lot of jobs. If you count the in lieu of payments and then what they pay on the New Hope Center, they're our largest taxpayer at over $1.5 million, almost $1.6 million. So, are there other partnerships we can work with them on? Yes, I think there's room to do that as well. But I want us to do the best for our citizens, and also, that also means supporting their missions and the jobs they bring to our community, as well as doing the best we can on an environmentally responsible cleanup. So,
Mr. Yeager?
I don't know if we need a motion to ask you to withdraw this.
no,
or
I'm
you
just happy. I wanted to kind of get your sense first, so I'll just withdraw it from the agenda. And we
I
can move to
really
the next
appreciate
item.
that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll just add, and I appreciate the mayor withdrawing it. I think you've handled it well, Mayor. I understand there's a lot of different things involved, and everyone has a different view on this for sure. I think the DOE facility is the largest repository of mercury in the world, if I'm not mistaken. So we're already holding that title, unfortunately. I'd like to see you, Mayor, continue on, and I'm happy to make a motion. Not to say that you have to agree, and not to say that you won't, with the city of Oak Ridge and Roane County, but I'd like to at least let you have something that walks away from here tonight with the idea that we are giving you the authority to go meet with those entities that are involved, and you represent us as a whole. and sit down with those two entities, Mr. Woody and Mr. Gooch, and come up with a plan that will work for everyone. And I think you would be instrumental in getting that plan. Would you entertain that, or would you like a motion from this body to move forward? I know you can do that on your own. You don't really need that from us, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
I mean, that sounds wonderful.
Do you?
Yes.
Are you
yeah.
comfortable with that?
Sure, yes, sir.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we allow Mayor Frank to work with Rowan County Executive Woody and the City of Oak Ridge, Mayor Gooch, and their boards to develop a strategy to move forward with this proposed landfill in Oak Ridge. I so move.
A motion, second, any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item, last month there were multiple discussions about additional storage, the condition of the roof at the DARC building, finding room for conference rooms in the courthouse. I have not completed that work yet, but I will let you know that it is a work in progress. I had mentioned to you before that I had reached out to one particular firm to do a walkthrough of the DARC building. They did not feel like after the assessment that they could assist us, so I invited ESG, who is working on the schools. They did the previous energy upgrade several years ago, and those have paid off very well. They've been able to do some capital projects there through savings. So I invited the finance director, as she's making all the recommendations to you and handling the budget through the budget process. We sat down with the principal there at ESG, and they are doing a no-cost, no contractual agreement to anything look at our facilities with a focus on the Jolly building, the DARC building, and the primary courthouse. So once they return with that information, I'll be better prepared to present you with some options and plans. The second arm of that is that Roger and I are working with Randy Walters in assessing the space, all the areas that are leased, the current leases that we have, and trying to develop a plan through the finance office. And then the third prong is I did meet with an architect who has some experience with taking older facilities, either repurposing them, maybe working in some type of partnership with the state of Tennessee. He and I have already met, and then Roger and I are going to be walking through the DARC building with him. I believe that appointment is at the end of this week, or if not, it's Monday or Tuesday of next week. I can't remember the calendar, but the purpose for having him walk through, in addition to what ESG is doing, is we are invested in that building now. We have the court there, but maybe there are some other things that we could do. For instance, he mentioned an idea where they had a building in another county with a particular senator that sits on the Energy Committee, and they repurposed that building, improved it, and then entered into a partnership with the state of Tennessee. So maybe there are some ideas that we can get from that architect that would help us improve the facility, make it a better asset for the community, and also not cost the county so much in maintenance. So maybe there's some ideas out there that I can bring back to you. But I wasn't able to get all of that done since our last meeting. But I should have more concrete answers for you at the next meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Yeager.
I drive Emily Valley all the time. So I saw some people up on the roof maybe a week or so ago. Was that part of this group, or do you have any idea?
There were some repairs done. There were some leaks there, and part of the issue is not necessarily the membrane on the roof. It is, I guess, maybe settling or something over time. And so what's happening is you're getting a swimming pool type scenario, and the water is just finding its way down. So Roger did enlist someone to do some repairs around the air units that actually kind of built
Yeah.
up the roof.
Yeah, that's where I saw them.
And that, knock on wood, seems to be taking care of the problem for right now.
Okay, great.
Just an estimate of the cost would be just a low estimate, I guess, because it's not an official proposal, was $450,000. But I don't know that necessarily takes into account if there are issues where it can be repaired. I mean, if you have that kind of settling, it can be repaired, and I did talk to the architect about that. So.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on the subject? You're still up, Mayor. City North Sidewalk
Okay.
Grant.
Okay, I met with Commissioner Anderson, as this was his proposal, and the motion that came out of operations was for me to meet with Mayor Mitchell. So I met with Mayor Anderson for him to facilitate that meeting and if he wanted to be a part of it. I did meet with Mayor Mitchell, and we discussed maybe some ideas for future partnership, and so we will come back with maybe some ideas for some future projects.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you, Mayor. Judicial Commissioners. Judge?
Judge Layton, I'm just down the hall. That's my address. You didn't address one thing under the mayor's thing, and since I initiated it many, many months ago, I hope you haven't forgotten about conference rooms and witness conference room on this third floor. It still
we're
is a
still-
major concern for the judges. We brought you a proposal, and ball's in your court as far as I'm concerned. I'm here tonight to talk about judicial commissioners, and briefly I would need to explain to you what they are and what they would do. The arrest warrant process is a process where officers obtain arrest warrants. They can do it one of two ways, but it really doesn't matter. The bottom line is an officer has to obtain an appropriate signature in regard to the arrest process. Whether they arrest them before or afterwards, it has to be properly sworn to before a magistrate or a person authorized by law to do so. Well, the law authorizes, under certain conditions with certain training, court clerks to do so, to do this. Mr. Lynch, as part of his reorganization of the court clerk's office and during his campaign, indicated that he would do just this. He would create, for lack of a better word, the term that he has used and has been thrown about is probable cause clerks. That's the standard for getting an arrest warrant, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So what happened was we created these probable cause clerks. In order for them to be capable of doing this, they had to have some training. So I prepared a little manual on probable cause. Judge Miller and I met with them and trained them in their initial training stages, so at least they would know what they were doing. Many counties, they just sign warrants, clerks. Here's what's happened. This is why I'm here today, partly, is that these ladies that are probable cause clerks, one of them comes in at 6:30 in the morning. We have many officers that are on the midnight shifts, so if they get off at 6 or 7 or whatever, they have to wait around until 8 o'clock or until they can find a judge to sign this. They need to get home and need to get to sleep. So what's happened since Mr. Lynch has taken over and we've trained these clerks, that they have been signing the warrants under certain circumstances under our direction to allow these officers to come in at 6:30. On the back of the elevator, if you ride in, it has a phone number. Call us, and Amanda, the clerk that's working at 6:30, calls them up, and they come and sign the warrant. So if a lot of times Judge Elders are here at 6:45, I'm here at 7, but it's not always that case. So these officers are able to go home and go to sleep. And one thing this does is if we've got 4 officers on a night shift that are waiting around an hour to find a judge, they're on overtime. It's costing money not to mention the possibility of, the lack of sleep, safety issue for our employees. So what we've done is we have set this process up where they gives us all greater flexibility. Well, in the documentation I gave you, if you will look at the back, my letter, I'll go back to the front, but I want you to look at the Attorney General's letter to me, all right? General Clark is an advocate for judicial commissioners, and I'm not here to debate that specifically. In my letter, I broke it into two parts. One, what we're doing now, and two, the bigger picture, and I'll get right back to that in a minute. General Clark, in his letter, while acknowledging that this process was lawful, was concerned, and you would see where he says, there is a small, indefinable possibility. If it's indefinable, but he's concerned. And as the person who's initiating this process to assist the officers, to assist the system, I certainly don't want to jeopardize the prosecution of any cases because of this small, indefinable possibility that 3 judges in Knoxville will wake up one morning and say, we don't like the way y'all been doing it forever in Tennessee. We're not the only county that does this. So his solution is what I'm here about tonight, is the county commission has the lawful authority to designate people as judicial commissioners. I believe that's correct. Am I not true, Jay? We are wanting, in the first phase of this, is to ask you to recommend that the 4 clerks that are working for Mr. Lynch that have been trained by Judge Miller and I be designated as judicial commissioners. It may be the difference between a tangerine and an orange, but General Clark would feel comfortable with that designation. Frankly, I don't see that it puts any harm on anyone. The only consequences to the county, it's always about money. There are no direct consequences financially as it relates to salary because these ladies are already on the payroll. Now, if Mr. Lynch determines that some additional stipend would be in order, he can bring that before the process. They are required to have 12 hours of CLE each year. And Rex has advised me, he's spoken with the commission. There's a commission, like everybody's got a commission, that will train them. We join for an annual fee of how much, Rex?
It's like $50 a year.
It's not much, and they will provide the CLE. But if we had to send them to Nashville for a day or so, we'd have the associated cost of that. So I don't see that as a big item, particularly when you offset it against the overtime that we're currently using with the officers. So we're asking that this group recommend to the commission that the 4 clerks be designated as judicial commissioners. That's my primary request. A secondary request in the letter was because General Clark, and I think Mr. Yeager for years, has been a debate about whether we need judicial commissioners. The commissioners I'm talking about right now, we don't anticipate them being out there at midnight signing search warrants and things that may or may not need to be done. For lack of a better word, they're minor league commissioners. We're trying to use them as an alternative to inconvenience. Perhaps they could later on broaden up to that. But there has been a debate historically, I don't know how many years you've been working on, Jay? 10, 12 judicial commissioners? Well, I guess we figured since they're looking at the agenda, we're going to talk about the front door of the courthouse again, and we're going to talk about, we would go back, it's back to the future. So that's a secondary issue that could be considered insofar as to whether or not that's a more time requirement way you can get a person trained. Secondly, expenses, management, whatever. So I'm not against that, but I'm not here for my primary purpose tonight is to validate what we've been doing. Have these ladies given a different hat to wear that will make General Clark feel comfortable with this indefinable small possibility. And when you can remove an indefinable small possibility for little or no inconvenience, somehow that makes good sense to me in that regard. So that's why I'm here. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you in that regard.
Commissioner Meade.
Yeah, the question I have, so what would we be recommending today is for these
Clerks to be
these
designated.
commissioners, clerks specifically for arrest warrants at this point.
Well, just be
And later
designated.
on, we might consider.
If they're designated judicial commissioners, there's a full gamut of things they can do. At this time, we've not opened up that avenue simply because, one, these are new positions. We're going to be sure they're trained to know what they do. At this time, we have restricted their assigning to warrants where the arrests have already been made. In other words, the officer arrested.
Yeah, an officer's already made a decision.
He made the arrest like
Judgment.
tonight. He's already made a
It's
judgment of probable cause. They come in, they can read and establish the probable cause. And that's just out of an abundance of precaution until we feel comfortable. I certainly could see a circumstance in the future where they could become full-blown. But again, we're dealing with a
Would you
clerical
come back to
position.
the commission when that?
Wouldn't have to
step
as to
is
the
made?
ones that have already been designated.
Yeah.
You know, but if the commission and the DA and the sheriff's office made a decision or made a case that we needed a nighttime commissioner, hypothetically, to sign search warrants, I don't, in that regard, if we determine that, you could create as many judicial commissioners as you want. There's no restriction. I believe Blount County, every court clerk is a judicial commissioner by designation. Over there. So what I'm saying is this opens up the avenue to go as broad as we feel we can with the people as we feel they're trained with. But there is certain accountabilities associated with signing any type of warrant. And
Well, I mean, judges, they can decide later a judge made a wrong decision too.
I guess I'd like to sit here and say the 20 years I've been here, every decision has been correct, but that would be an out-and-out lie. And that's why they have appellate judges and appellate.
But you have to make decisions based on what you know at the time.
You do the best you can, and you want to go home and look in the mirror and sleep. And I followed the golden rule.
What I was trying to
how
point
I
out
want to be done to me.
What I was trying to point out is the fact that there's some infinitesimal risk that one of these clerks could make the wrong decision.
There's an infinitesimal, undefined risk that my wife may not.
Everyone in this room makes decisions every
But
day.
General
that could be
Clark
wrong.
was concerned about it, and if General Clark will prosecute the cases, I'm not saying he's not said that, he prosecutes all, but if he wouldn't, then all of our efforts to accommodate the sheriff's department, eliminate the overtime, to bring the advantage that I've described, would go away. He's elected by the people to prosecute. I'm not here to prosecute these cases. I'm here to solve the problem that Mr. Lynch addressed, and the sheriff's department for years has been talking about these officers on midnight, and I'm trying to do it with minimal, certainly limited definable cost. Not right now, the cost would be $50, and what it would take to send 4 ladies or clerks or whoever to training.
That's not much compared to the overtime involved.
I haven't really run a calculation on the overtime, but if you assume two officers a day at 2 hours, that's 10 hours a week, 40 hours a month, 480 hours a year. I don't know what they make, but let's say they make $20 a piece, you're there.
Yeah.
Not to mention, they are our employees that we want to make sure that they get adequate rest, adequate time with their families, so that when they're at work, they're doing their best job.
So is what you need a motion for these 4 clerks to be designated
As judicial
as
commissioners.
judicial commissioners with the responsibility for doing arrest warrants only?
No, just, as far as I'm concerned, just designate them as judicial commissioners and then let us utilize their skills. I don't have to come back and say, okay, we've got arrest warrants now, we're going to do this. I'd like to give them all the authority that's afforded under the state statute, and it is very detailed.
See, what you're looking for is basically a...
Designate them judicial commissioners.
Overall.
I want them to have all the
And that
authority.
makes the Attorney General feel more comfortable about them doing these...
Well, I'm not here blasting General Clark. I've showed you the letter.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, if this solves any concern he has, then my goal is that the prosecutions be timely.
Sure.
And that he feel comfortable with the process, and that if we can accommodate the officers. If General Clark doesn't want to prosecute them, then fine. I'm going to go down there. I'm going to prosecute whatever they bring into me. I'm going to sign whatever is presented to me at 7:45 in the morning, 7:15 or 8 o'clock. I've been up at 2 o'clock in the morning signing search warrants for ATF and whatever. So my point is, I'm trying to accommodate the officers. I'm trying to fulfill Mr. Lynch's reorganization process at a minimal cost.
So the judges in the court clerk is going to make sure these people are appropriately trained before you give them the authority.
You have to be appropriately trained.
Well, you're saying that
well,
right
if
now
you
they're
if you
not
feel
ready
more
for the
comfortable
second.
that they be trained under the auspices of the county law director, that doesn't bother me. We just did it initially because what it says, he's a court clerk capable of determining probable cause, is all the rules say.
Yeah.
But if you feel more comfortable with a more structured situation, in which the county law director presided over it, I don't know. I'm not here looking for a fight or anything. I'm just looking for a solution to a problem. So if you want Jay to train them or to review their training, I'm just explaining to you, I have no dog in the hunt here other than trying to accommodate what I've said. There's no hidden agenda here.
No, I'm very supportive of the program.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
Well, I
because
think-
you very,
I
you very
think that-
distinctly separated to a second program in your letter.
Yeah, we only did that because General Clark and others have in the past expressed that concern. And I didn't want them to feel that I was here trying to pull the rug out from underneath for their position they want to advance in the future, and to let you know that because in the past, some of you have heard the term judicial commissioner in light of those previous discussions. So I wanted you to understand this is a different type. Judicial commissioner light. There'll be on there. But I believe the law provides that the county commission can appoint them. I think supervision can be under the direction of the general session judges. Is that right? Yes, sir. Yeah, Mr. Yeager.
Under the supervisor
He's the
general?
authority on it. He's hours of research on it. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we may not need a nighttime judicial commission back at this point.
Okay, I'm trying to word a motion to support this.
Well, just make them. Tell them what you want, Rex.
I was going to say, the supervision of the training
Yeah.
was through the general sessions judge. And we got the training manual, that was all conducted
Yeah.
through there.
So the general
Supervision-
sessions court, wherever the judges happen to be. Yeah.
So that's my responsibility to make sure that we don't let these clerks do more than they're trained to do. I mean, it's real common sense. They know what their
Yeah.
limits are, and we're not going to, it's a liability that I don't want. But the part of that, we are willing to take the liability of signing the warrants, as we've been trained for, to help the sheriffs do we call it just the minor league type warrants. Now, there is a need, as he said, for the nighttime search warrants, a more higher level degree, judicial clerk, which y'all can address at a separate time. I'm not involved with that. We're just here to talk about the one we've got in place now. So what we'd recommend is, in compliance with the TCA code 40-1-111, is to approve, I'll give you the names, and you may have to help me, Shaylee Prickett, Amanda Val, Angie Alley, and Emily Wallace.
Okay.
But they'll be our, now with that, in compliance, they'll have to have the annual training. There's so many hours of training they have to do a year. And so we will follow up per 40-1-111, we'll follow the requirements of that.
Okay. So I guess I'm willing to make a motion for the commission to support the nomination of these 4 individuals that have been named as judicial commissioners, subject to the supervision of the General Sessions Court and training to comply with Tennessee state law.
That's fine. That's what we need, I believe. Jay, you think anything else that we need to tell them?
That's excellent. I'm excited about the program.
Well, I mean, we can broaden it how we need to.
Well, I was looking at Chief over here, Shane. I can tell you, when I looked at this, there's a tremendous amount of overtime for these officers, and this is going to help considerably, and I appreciate you doing it. These guys are having to wait around all morning after they're off. It's going to save this county a lot of money.
I think it's certainly from a cash flow standpoint, it'll be a positive cash flow. It may come from X to Y, but more important though, I think it's a convenience for the people that work for us and protect our community, and that's pretty important to me.
And it's not just about the money. I mean, the money's great to save, but our guys that work 12 hours all night and they're ready to go home, there are times that Judge Layton has been tied up and he'd be the only one here. And they stood around till 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning before they could get a warrant signed. And then they may have to come back at 1 o'clock for court and have to work that night. They don't get any sleep at all. This is a huge asset for the sheriff's department and all police officers.
Second.
I have a motion second, Commissioner Yeager.
Rex, do you have any of these clerks available to Oak Ridge, or are they all going to be in this building?
2 at Oak Ridge and 2 here.
Great.
And there are senior level clerks. I've got clerks level 1, 2, and 3. In my department, it'd be a clerk 3, as long as you want to be qualified for this, is have to have years of experience. You would take a new clerk.
Okay, great, thanks.
Only thing I'd like to add, though, if you do this, do need a little bit of money for some training. I don't have money in my budget for that. You know, if you want to earmark $1,000 for training, you can add it to my training budget, or you can just put judicial commissioner training. I'd rather see that, have a line item above it, just judicial commissioner training. That way we know we only use it for that.
Does that have to go to budget? I would think so. I think they actually
It'd be an
add
appropriation.
something to the budget. I think we have to go to the budget committee.
Yeah, but you've got to do it within 12 months. So we don't have to do it until after the budget cycle. So we just need to make sure that would be included in the next budget cycle.
Okay.
Commissioner Jameson? Okay.
I want to vote.
Commissioner Wanda?
I like it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't doubt a need. Obviously, there's a need. I don't need to regurgitate all that information. What I will do, Mr. Chairman, is I read reference number CTAS-476 and the 5 items for judicial commissioners if appointed by the county legislative body. And again, I'm not here to debate, Mr. Chairman. I'm just here to say what it says in the information that I can research from. Issuing arrest and search warrants upon finding of probable cause. Issuing, and the judge can help me with this word because I don't know it. Minimus.
That's
Thank you, sir.
Order to jail.
Following compliance with lawful procedures. Appointing attorneys for indigent defendants. Setting and approving bonds and the release of recognizance of defendants. And issuance of injunctions and other appropriate orders in case of alleged domestic violence. It is TCA Code 40-1-111, as Rex said. A judicial commissioner appointed by the legislative body is considered a county officer and serves as a fixed term set by the county legislative body, but the term may not be longer than 4 years. Judicial commissioners are compensated from the county's general fund in an amount determined by the legislative body. All fees collected by the judicial commissioners must be paid to the county general fund. Will these folks be collecting any funds?
Nothing else beyond what they're currently doing.
And we understand that all those funds will be coming to the general fund.
All the money that they collect now comes to the general fund. Judicial commissioners historically don't collect money.
I wouldn't think so.
And you correctly have read the statute, and these are all events that we could broaden into, but I don't want to broaden into it as the supervisory person until I'm comfortable that their skill level is there to do those things. In other words, set a bond. I don't want to set a bond. They don't understand the factors of the bonds or whatever. We could, but by being judicial commissioners rather than just a court clerk, we can evolve into this, or we can at least investigate the possibility. As a court clerk, all they can do is sign a warrant.
And the last part,
Judicial commission, we do all that.
and the last part of this, Mr. Chairman, no search warrant, arrest warrant, or minimus may be issued by an official whose compensation is contingent in any manner upon the issuance or non-issuance of such warrants or minimus. I guess, Mr. Chairman, what I would say is I'd like for us to consider, it sounds like we're making a position in the county. And if we're going to do that, and I know they already exist in that capacity, but I mean, the argument I'm hearing is we need to do judicial commissioners so they can do what they're doing now. And the reason we need to make them judicial commissioners is because the time frame don't fit. Sometimes officers have to wait to 6:30 or what have you. It seems like it's an hour or a time lapse or something. If we're going to make judicial commissioners and appoint people, I think it's important that we as a body send this either to the legislative body or the HR committee for this proper job description to be developed. If it's only going to be for, doing the things they've already said, that's fine, but I think that job description needs to say that, needs to be going through our county HR and make sure that we're covered in every aspect. That's just my 2 cents. So I'll vote no on the current motion as presented, but if the makers of the motion are willing to reconsider including HR so we can develop this, and I haven't heard from the mayor at all. I don't know what her thoughts are on this either, but that's just my 2 cents. And again, I recognize there's a need, Judge, and I'm not arguing. I'm not
going to argue. The bottom line is General Clark had concerns. I personally think the clerk signing the arrest warrants is fine, but if he's not going to prosecute those, or if he's going to have concerns, then I want to address them. for me personally, I don't care whether they have a judicial commissioner or not. I think it provides something to the officers. And if you want to run through HR, I don't care. Don't bother me one dadgum bit. But I only ask you because General Clark, that's why I put his letter on there so you wouldn't think, what's going on? That's why I'm here. Otherwise, I personally believe court clerks can do it. The law's been there. I've given speeches across the state to the State Court Clerks Association, they can do it. And I believe I'm right. But I'm working with him, and he's working with me, and I'm trying to accomplish that. But however you want to handle it, you can send it wherever you want to. I've already been through this once before.
Based on the reading the statute, we're not putting them in a position where they get paid per warrant.
That's the old justice of the peace. That's illegal. It's been illegal for years.
And it says that that's legal. We're not doing that, okay? But it does say that there's a 4-year appointment is the maximum.
So up to you can appoint 1 year and renew it a year at a time if you want.
Yeah, I see. And so perhaps I need to amend my motion to say for whatever you want to do a 2-year term, and then we can do it.
You're with me. I do 1 year term. I would just do it year to year. But
okay, I would amend my motion that it be a 1-year term. I don't think anything else in the statute is a problem. It gives us room to expand their authority. That's not the intent at this time.
All it says they may do this.
And they are doing things they can't do now. I mean, these officers show up with these people in the morning, and the clerks can't sign it. We got to wait for a judge to come in right now.
Well, they've been signing it, but then the Attorney General's questioning whether or not that's going to be a valid prosecution.
And so we want these to be valid.
By changing their hat. They take off this hat, put on that hat.
So the only modification I want to make is that it be for a 1-year term.
Okay. Okay. We have a motion to amend by the maker of the motion and a second by the one that seconded the motion to amend. Mayor?
Just a couple of things, and not to hold up any progress for the Sheriff's Department on this, because I understand their needs. Last month, it was stated, there was a request by Mr. Lynch that we pay these folks $5,000 each to do this job, in addition to what they currently earn. So just in seeking clarification there. And then to Chairman Wandell's point, there is a section in the budget that has been sitting there, it's still on our books, and it's passed by county commission every year for judicial commissioners. And so some funds are put in there. I think there's only like $1,000, and I don't even know why it's in there. Jay, maybe you know the history on that, but
It's just on the chart.
yeah, it's just for paper or something, I guess, if they ever came to be. So to Chairman Wandell's point, it is worth us looking into how is this set up in the other counties. Is it okay to pay them out of the clerk's salary? And I'm not doubting what the judge said. He's saying it's not going to cost us anything. But do we need to, under the chart of accounts, are we going to have to separate that? Are we going to have to pull that out of their salary? Or is it going to be something that's going to need to come to Budget Committee and be addressed by Chairman White and his committee? So that's just some housekeeping on this particular request. So
You can actually add that.
Yeah, well, the clerk has already said that he doesn't need this added to the budget until the next year's budget. That's correct. And if there's $1,000, which is what he said is the number already in our current budget, it doesn't seem to be a lot. And none of this leads to a problem to me with the statute, because we are not putting ourselves in a position where there's people that are getting paid according to how many they do, because that would encourage them to sign all of these, okay? And I understand why they put that in the statute. They don't want to make it that somebody financially benefits because they can arrest more people.
Well, they also say a county commissioner can't be a judicial commissioner.
Yeah,
It's in the statute. That's right.
So no, I know for sure that I wouldn't be qualified.
I understand. I'm just pointing out there are lots of prohibitions you can take with that.
Yeah.
As of right now, there will be no salary increases for doing this job. I would just thought somewhere down the road, as we increase the responsibility of judicial commissioners, they take more on that they're doing now, might open up that opportunity. Could pay them an extra 4 or 5.
It'll
10,000,
require them to be
whatever.
better trained.
But
and
as of
spend
right
more
now,
time.
it's part of they're already classified as that, so there'll be no increase other than whatever training we may want to send them. It will be after July.
Okay, I support that.
Anyone else? We have an amended motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make another motion that we refer this to the, taking Commissioner Waddell's point, refer it to the HR committee and the budget committee for their review. Not necessarily approval, but for them to look at it as well.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion?
I have a question. Would that mean they're going to look at it because we're doing it, or they're going to look at it and we can't do it until they've reviewed it? There's a difference.
Well, we've already voted on the first motion. This motion is just for them to do in-depth study, basically, the way.
They'll come back with us if they find any issues.
Yes, and we're going to redo it in 1 year.
Yeah.
And if there's any improvements or suggestions from them, we can change in 1 year or see what improvements we need to make.
Commissioner Waddell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I also think that the original motion said it to legal form, so I think it'd be appropriate to make sure that we're doing it to legal form, and that includes HR. We need a job description. We don't want to get caught with no job description. That'd be trouble, I think.
And just to clarify, the 1 year, do you mean that to expire December 31st, or is it going to be January the 19th? I just think have it on some type of annual basis, whether it be September or December 31st.
December 31st. Is that okay with this second? Sure. Okay, but this is kind of discussing something already passed, but it does make sense to give when the end of the year is. It would be at the end of the calendar year.
Is everybody in agreement with that? Okay.
One of the things, as far as your job descriptions, all my employees have job descriptions based on the jobs they're doing, and they will all have a job description outlining what I expect, what my judicial commissioner would be allowed to do. The danger is, they could go out and buy what job done and sign search warrants and everything else. But I'm going to tell you about the job description that I'll have in my place that I give my employees. It will outline specifically what we want to do, and it'll be very small amount.
Is that shared with HR?
I don't know, you get a copy of all our job descriptions? We keep all, I've got a folder in my office with all of them.
That's not a problem. Blount County, I have in my office a detailed job description for Blount County, goes on 2 or 3 pages. I'll give it to Mr. Lynch and give it to HR.
I'll work with HR. I'll make sure she sees it.
But it's very detailed. They've been doing this for 10, 12 years.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, we get the job description.
Okay. Courthouse secured entrance.
I'll just add to what was just said. Rex has been really good about sharing with us, and CTAS has a job description based on that we can pull and kind of mimic, and he curtails whatever he wants based on those. That's a discussion we had initially when he came into office, so it's one of the links we shared. Was everybody able to get what I sent?
Yes.
I apologize. We all know I am not IT, but this is a copy of what I had sent. And Elizabeth was kind enough to allow me to use him as a guinea pig until I got that. I apologize.
Let me see right there.
The sheriff's office, Sheriff Barker, myself, Kim's office, we've met with Brian, with IT. We've been in discussion about what we're going to call phase 1 of courthouse security, where we're securing the building. And what the sheriff has agreed initially is we're going to work with them about taking over the badge system to where we will monitor and do backgrounds and stuff that you all submit. We make sure everything's correct for new hires and the different access they'll have. The only thing that we have asked is they are talking about being in the process of updating this badging system, and we have asked Kim and Brian to do the research and get bids and things that are needed to do the update before we actually start the takeover process, because we don't want to come in and learn the system currently being used and then have to go back into learning a new system. But the sheriff is strongly encouraged that this should be part of our duties as the sheriff's department, and going with that, working forward. As we all know, we have a strong feeling that the courthouse does need to be secured better. We've talked about it, and we want to get your all's support in going at a one entrance, one exit in the very near future for the safety of the employees and the elected officials and even the public that's here, doing business. So that's our support to HR and the county commission and courthouse security. So, Kim?
Oh, by the way, for the people at home that don't know, this is Chief Deputy Brian Galloway.
Yes, I'm sorry, Brian Galloway.
It's okay. And congratulations.
Thank you. That's good.
So the handout that I gave was where HR did a survey of the employees in regards to the one secure entrance to the courthouse. The survey resulted, just from the courthouse employees, 81% in favor of, which I felt was quite staggering. And then at the back of what I handed out had some comments that was given, because in the survey we did not survey the elected officials or department heads. Okay, that was sent afterwards once I sent out the results, allowing them to give a response. Some did and some didn't. Those that did was attached. Okay, what started some of these conversations, as you all know, I sent out an email in October due to an instance that happened in HR. That kind of started these conversations. This has been ongoing since October. We went to the security committee, in which you have a letter where the presiding judge Cantrell of the security committee sent a letter requesting that you all please review and consider a one entry to secure the building. You may have any questions on all this so far?
Commissioner Meade?
Well, I have some concerns about what this is going to cost. I'm trying to figure out what this is going to look like. Is this going to look like a couple of deputies upstairs and 2 deputies downstairs at this one door and another deputy roaming someplace? Having some background in security operations, typically the first people that have exposure to the public, the unscreened public, you don't get any credit for and points for security. Okay, because it's assumed that they could be taken care of quickly enough that they really can't respond. And I know you watch in the movies how these people can draw and shoot in a fraction of a second, and they figured it all out. Real people don't operate that way. And if somebody just walks up to you and decides to shoot you, I'm sorry, there's not really much you can do. Okay, that's just the truth. So it's what happens after that counts, and that means you have to have people other places in the building that are available to respond on a full-time basis. The other thing, is this going to be a 24-hour-a-day thing? Is that going to be manned 24 hours a day? Or is it going to be like the security we've had here, where it's open during court hours and then it's closed? There's also legal issues. The commission would have to make the decision to post the courthouse at all times. And so during those times that the courts are not having judicial proceedings, state law would make that a maximum $500 fine, no jail thing if somebody came through. Okay, if they snuck through, it would be maximum $500 fine and no jail. Okay, if they come during the day when court's in session somehow got by, then it's a felony. I think it's a Class E felony for coming into a courthouse during proceedings. Okay, so so what I'm saying is that whether court is in session or not makes a big difference in what these people are guilty of and what the potential penalties would be. My other concern is that even though you have the other 3 doors secured from the outside, they have to be open from the inside, so they always can be open from the inside. So we're going to have to make sure there's people constantly monitoring those doors, probably alarming the other doors, so that just like we have some doors now
going to the third floor. If those doors are open, the guys immediately get an alarm and they got a camera right there. They'd see what's going on so they can react quickly. Is that going to be a 24-hour-a-day thing? So we're going to double or triple the number of man hours required for the courthouse? We just have to look at what it's all going to be. The other thing is how will legal permit holders, be handled in this? There's already an exemption for county commissioners with carry permits to carry in the courthouse any place except in the courtrooms during court. Or during judicial proceedings is the legal term. Okay, that would include a judge's office, for instance, if you had something going on. But so I'm a little concerned. There's part of me that says you want to really improve the safety in the courthouse, allow all the employees in the courthouse that have carry permits to carry at work. Put a sign on the front door that says there are multiple people throughout this building that are armed and ready to defend the people in this building. Rather than put up a sign that says, if you can sneak by or get in a back door, everybody has been disarmed except the designated uniformed officers that you can readily identify. And so this is not as simple as it sounds. It's going to be expensive. We've got to decide just how many cents on the tax rate are we going to spend to do this, and does it give us the degree of increased safety that we really think it will? Bad to say.
Okay, those were a lot of questions, and I will try to answer. First of all, as far as the specifics to that, we haven't worked those out. We are simply here to raise a topic, to get some discussion and some conversation started on a topic that is very serious and needs some review.
Yep.
So that is why we're here. We're starting this discussion. As many as we can talk about the specifics and where are they going to make entry and how much is it going to cost, and there's so many discussions. I've already been in discussions with, of course, the sheriff. Brian has assisted with that. I've also spoken with Roger, who has maintenance over the buildings, to look at some of the areas and what that means as far as cost. We also know that there is money that is set aside for courthouse security that will assist in facilitating part of that. As far as how long is it going to be open, 24 hours, that honestly comes down to, in my opinion, and that's just my opinion, based upon TCA 57108, where it states what the sheriff's duty is and what his responsibility is, and I feel like that'll be part of those discussions. So I don't know if the answer is to put a committee together to start having the talks to figure out what that is, or does it mean that we start here and we just start carrying it through? One of the next items that is on my topics to talk about is the badge and ID system, and that being what Chief Galloway had spoken to on phase 1 and what that means and what that looks like. So I'm a little bit more prepared to speak on the specifics of that if you want to start there. Okay?
Hold on a second, Kim.
All righty.
I think maybe a direction here in going forward is we see that there's 81% of the people that work in this courthouse is in favor of that. But I think what we really are asking for is a plan in the cost. And personally, myself, I'm in favor of the one entrance. But it's hard to sit down here and say, yes, you got carte blanche. So I think if you could come back with a plan and a cost so that we could look at as operations committee, then we could probably go forward. But that's just my 2 cents worth.
So feedback that I would like to be able to have to take back, for the chief to be able to take back to the sheriff, is this a plan that you want him to develop and bring forth, or would you prefer a committee be put together to have these discussions?
Well, I think that comes down to who's got jurisdiction over the courthouse.
It's the sheriff's responsibility to secure the courthouse and the facility. So ultimately, it is Russell's jurisdiction. I don't think Russell's opposed to having a committee put together. Like Kim said, this is early stages, and we're basically just kind of doing a little awareness of the direction we're trying to go, with the badge system swap out being the first phase of trying to make the employees in this building feel safer. I've heard from several of them. Kim's talked to several of them, and it is a concern to a lot of people. So again, it's not something we're asking to happen tonight. It's just to get you all aware of the direction we're wanting to go. As far as, 24 hours and things, those are just things we'll have to work as this progresses. To me, just sitting here today, I would assume initially it would be during the normal business hours that the courthouse offices are open and courts do go longer sometimes. So yes, it could extend on into the evening. There's functions like this meeting tonight, regular county commission, budget committee. People have access to that, and it, I don't know that necessarily has to be completely locked down. That's just topics we'll have to work with. I think the primary goal right now is to keep this building as secure as possible during the normal functions where all of our employees are here and deserve the protection. That's at least what I think right now, starting out, and see where it progresses from there.
Personally, I've got all the confidence in Sheriff Barker to come up with a committee and come back with a recommendation. I think y'all are doing a great job.
Thank you.
If I could say something a moment. We've had some good discussions going forth. I've been working with Kim and Natalie and Catherine on some of what this will cost, what's this going to look like as we're approaching you. It's in the background being worked out, some of these facets, so we can, if you all are interested in moving forward. I think what we're here for is to see, should we move forward? We've got a consensus there that we should, and I think part of what we're doing now is we're getting those prices. We are working that data to try to get some numbers for you all to see them. But as far as some of the original issues that were there, the badging system we have is currently, it's piecemeal between the buildings. They don't speak to one another. What's running in the courthouse doesn't update to the Daniel Arthur system. What's at Daniel Arthur or the courthouse doesn't update to juvenile court. So we've got a disconnected system that in itself causes some lacks in security. And I think that's part of the issue. That's probably why I'm standing here to an extent, is some of those issues were paramount in the beginning. I think overall, part of the issue that I have from the start of this has been that badge system was antiquated when we got it. When it was put here, I believe 2006. I've spoke to Galahar. We've had meetings with them about it. They openly stated when we bought that, it was older when we got it. It was built on a late 90s platform. So when we got that system in the building, it already had some age. As it stands right now, it's hard to keep that system even running on the latest platforms because it's not updated. Also, over at juvenile court at this moment, that system is broken. I'm going tomorrow to meet a programmer that we're paying by the hour to come in to try to take that system apart, who's cheaper than Galahar, which is $160 an hour, to pay them to put more Band-Aids on what's really wore out, broken, and should be replaced. As far as I'm concerned, that equipment is just a bottomless pit. Every time we call Galahar, we're just extending this. And the issue is it's not going to go away. It's just going to get older. Another item, these cards we're all using. These cards are very low bit security cards. You can buy these on Amazon for $12. They're for 100 of them. They're very cheap. This type of stuff that we are dealing with now, as we move forward, we can put a system in place if we work together that we all need. And however that is that the commission and the officials and the directors and the staff want to go, we're just saying we would like to look at that. Not that we're here to collect the money or to start a budget line item. It's more of just to bring this before you all so that you can digest on it, get everybody speaking about it. But the badging system is my major part of this, and as it goes as far as IT, we're ready to start getting this replaced if you all are behind that.
All right, before we get to that, that's actually topic number 8. I think we're still on the courthouse security entrance, so we can get a direction. Do we have a motion for Sheriff Barker to do a plan, or What's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion that the chief deputy, you feel like that you can put something together and come back to us, some sort of plan?
I certainly do. I think, like I say, this is early stages, giving you all an idea of what we would like to look at and get your feedback. Like she said, if you know, are we spinning our wheels looking at this, or is this something y'all are open to allowing us to entertain and try to secure the building for our employees and officials and hopefully be supportive of that?
So what you're looking for is a motion of support.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to make that motion of support.
Okay.
Have a motion, second. Any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Wandale.
Just would like to define support. I mean, I support a lot of things too, but I'd like to know what it is we're supporting.
I'll be more specific.
And no disrespect, but if what I heard, Mr. Chairman, is the sheriff is responsible for the security of this courthouse. If that's the case, I suspect the sheriff will tell us what he wants and how he's going to do it. And that's kind of what the chief's doing here now. If I think the HR director, Kim, has shown that 81% of the folks that were surveyed in this building would like to see more security. I think, Mr. Chairman, that the sheriff's office could take immediate action with placing officers throughout this building however they see fit. And that would not require any further studying or any of that stuff. I would like to see another officer on the first floor of this building at all times. I have concerns with, we put one entrance in, and then what about the other entrances? What's the fire marshal say about that? What happens when they go out the back door and they came in the secured entrance, but they go out the back door and then somebody else comes in? All of those questions are yet to be answered, and I understand that, and I'm not saying I'm against securing this building, but it sounds like it's the sheriff's up to him to kind of tell us what he would like to see, and he's clearly indicated, according to Judge Cantrell and others, and Chief has mentioned, and HR Director, that he's wanting to secure it with one entrance. And if that's the case, then I'd like to see that plan. I think if we do the officer down on the first floor, and then we do this new badge system, which is next, and I appreciate you clarifying that because it kind of got into a couple of different things. If you're going to do the badge next, that gives a level of security to the folks that are in this building, I think, and I'd support that. And then I look forward to seeing more information on a potential one entrance. That's just my comments. Thank you.
I think really, I feel personally is just that, yes, we understand, we agree that 81% would like to see more security, and we'd like for the sheriff to come back just like Commissioner Wandale and say, well, this is the plan. So, Commissioner Meade.
Something I make sure is pointed out, if we go ahead and have this single secure door, I'm not saying I'm against that, okay, I just think it's going to end up being expensive. We got to make sure we do it right. Yes. Kind of like the landfill, we got to do it right. Okay. You got to understand that right now you would have to have that door manned, because anytime there's a public meeting the public has a right to access to, we have to have that door manned. And I don't care if we're here until sometimes 10, 11 o'clock. That door is going to have to be manned any time there's a public meeting going on, in addition to office hours for the county services where people come in to pay their taxes and all the other stuff they do, right? The clerk and the trustee. And so we have to make sure that we cover it right. And I can't imagine that any time that door is being used for public access, you're going to have at least 2 officers here minimum. One to man the door, one to be able to respond if something was some event in the building. Otherwise, if you only had one person down there and there was something that went off in the building, then he would have to abandon that door, and that's when the other 20 people could come in the front door now that he's gone. You know what I'm talking about. You have to make sure you cover that door. You can't just lock doors, because everybody in this building has a legal right to be able to open any exit door, unless it's specifically been designated as a non-exit, which is can be done under law. This fire marshal has to approve it.
Well, I think you're very correct that it would take a very minimum of 2 people to
Yeah,
man.
anytime there's public access.
One entrance, one exit door. And that, to me, is just part of a plan that we'll have to initiate and present to you all at a later time. So,
Yeah. But another thing about this thing about the badges right now have been funded through HR, and they've managed that whole thing. So there is kind of a change in who's, even though the sheriff has always been responsible for security of the courthouses, that's constitutional law, he hasn't been responsible for the badges. And everybody understands those badges, if you go through a door in the middle of the night, they know by name and time exactly who went through the door. That's the way the system is supposed to work. Okay, and that's good because that leads you to believe that the person that goes through the door, you know who it is. Then we have TV cameras that record stuff, and so if there was a question about, God, we think Meade's in Hawaii. How could he have come in the back door at 1 o'clock in the morning? That maybe the sheriff would look at the film, and see if it looks like me. And so there's just a lot of things that have to be covered. Do it right, just like the landfill. Thank you.
Anybody else? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And just be aware that you have to make a proposal to to the budget committee as well, and that's going to be the hurdle. Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Kim is going to bring up the employee badge system, and would this be covering part of this security? Okay, that's, okay.
Yes. So the letter that I just handed out was in regards to the badge ID system.
Before,
Judge Layton.
Almost done.
Mr. Chairman, Kim, I don't mean to cut you off, but it was in the minutes for us to discuss, and I don't see it is it in the agenda tonight? It was in the minutes from last meeting to discuss the witness rooms.
That was actually going to be under the mayor's report, but we can go ahead and, of course, I'm in full support of that, and I think Rex, our court clerk.
He got away.
Yeah. I guarantee you he's in full support.
Mr. Chairman, we're just going to bring it up, and we just wanted to let the judge know that we are going to
Well, I just
talk.
know that a couple, 2 or 3 sessions ago, you asked us, we brought you a drawing for 620 feet. And,
Yeah,
the committee should send it back to you, and after that, it got lost.
Yes, sir. No, that was on me. It's now in.
Yeah, so that's where we are now.
Commissioner Isabel's on top of it.
Well, I feel certain that there's
That's
everybody
fine.
on.
I lost it, it got lost, and once it got lost in the bureaucratic processes of county commission, I wasn't smart enough to figure out where it was.
I'm sure that every board member would like to see that witness room.
And I hope we can work it out because it's a minimal amount of space with a maximum return of convenience and safety to be on the 3rd floor. But it may need to be in the big picture. I don't know if we're going to look at everything.
And that's kind of how I saw that as we're looking at all the courthouse security. Of course, the witness room is part of that.
Yeah, we can look at the big picture of the whole thing. But the problem is the 3rd floor is a definite finite square footage. We can't make it any bigger. So whatever we do here, we can only do it on the 3rd floor because keeping the witnesses on the 1st floor with the courts on the 3rd.
Right.
We've had that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wandell.
Thank you, Kim.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Also to that point, I did lean over Chairman Wandell, and I told him, I said that
Thank
you
you,
all
ma'am.
had put that under, I'm supposed to come back and work with everybody on that.
That's right,
part
that's
of
right.
also getting where the space is, where we are now, and I understand there's some talk too now. Other departments are looking at switching some spaces, and so I will be coming back with that, and I did let the judge know that.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, Kim.
Oh, you're fine. I want to thank you all for showing support of the one entry and listening to what the employees had to say. I appreciate that. The next thing is the badge system. And what we're looking at it is as the phase 1 of security. And y'all seen this week, I struggle with sending an email, so I'm having Brian help on this. It is a lot of information, and we are going through everything. Now, whenever we put the badging system in the dark building, okay, for General Sessions 2, we had them look at this building as well because this building's system through Galahar is quite antiquated. January 1, I was sitting here trying to get the doors to lock because for some reason it had went offline. Brian couldn't put it back on. It's a continual battle. You all notice that sometimes the doors lock when they're not supposed to or unlock when they're not supposed to. That's part of what we're battling right now, is the system is so old that we're trying to have it looked at. When we done that, the price was outrageous, okay? It was a lot. But in having these discussions at the HR advisory committee level, they spoke to at that time not only wanting to update the system here, but looking at putting in a system for the Jolly Building, General Sessions 2, Oak Ridge, and North satellite offices. And by doing that, you're securing all of Anderson County buildings. That's what I'm asking for here, is for us to move forward with a bid that will give us a price on what this looks like, okay, for the entire county's buildings. Not just this building, but all of them. Okay, so we spoke to in the letter that you have 3 different things, advantages of doing so. But also, I spoke with Natalie. And in the next to the last paragraph, talking to her and where there may be funding for such a thing. Right now, I'm estimating, and this is a rough estimate because I don't have the bids, but we're currently building one at around $100,000. And that's for the entire county buildings. Updating what's here that needs to be updated and putting things in place for the Jolly Building, updating what's already present, putting things in place where they're not. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at. All I'm asking is that this body accept a formal request so we can do a formal RFP. I don't want Catherine and us to go through that process when it's not going to be favorable.
Do you know if there's any money now for maintenance for that fund, for the badges? I mean, is there a line item for that?
So the line item that is in the HR's budget is $2,500.
A year?
A year. We normally go over that. I usually have to come back and ask for more, but that's all that is there. So we have gotten IT to help us determine, like these badges, when we were purchasing them from the vendor, they were costing us around $7 a piece. And like Brian just said, he's getting them for us now for $12 for, 50 to 100. So we're working through that. We had this company give us a quote on a ribbon, and it was $395, I think. And Brian can get it for $49. So we're doing our very best. I've always been a good penny pincher, and which has really helped out on this badge system because I've had to be. But including IT and all of this, trying to ensure that the badge system is what we need, and not only what we need, but the Jolly Building needs, and all the other locations.
Okay. Commissioner Wadu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, do you have anything on this or any thoughts? That's pretty deep.
I was just thinking, I was going to ask to add something to the agenda about bringing us some money. So, I haven't really been involved in the discussions. So I'd like to review some of the materials that were passed out and maybe, that sounds kind of expensive. I don't know if there's another way of doing things, or maybe some other counties, what they do. I would just like to reserve comment till I have a chance to actually study what's being passed around.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Give a little input to maybe help answer some questions for some thoughts. Part of where we have Jeff Cole down at Oak Ridge, his office at the county clerk, and then the Norris County Clerk's office, they currently do not have a system of the same sort. They do not have a badging system. I've spoke with the county clerk, and he had no issues with that going in place if we were to find a way to do it. As I was saying earlier when we were talking with the sheriff or with the chief, this system has, a lot of where I feel about it on the technical side is, first off, I've never agreed, period, that it should have ever been in HR. I wasn't here when any of that was done. That predated me. I know we wanted to move it out of there. It was something that during the matters from a couple of years ago, we didn't feel like that was the best place that it should be. And then since then, it's sort of, a lot of other things have went on. We've had other issues that you all have been tackling over the last couple of years. So it's sort of been on a back burner, but as a security stance from the technical part, we really should look at something if it's in if it comes down to money. I know that where we have already spent money in the past was back in '06. I don't know where that stands with the committees that have. There are some monies out there. I know, Natalie, I don't want to speak the financial terms because I'm not up on that, but it was the courthouse security and some of the estimates of the money that is sitting there in regards to that. I don't know how the judges feel directly, but I think some of that's been communicated to them. Some of that money was set aside for some of the judges, wasn't it?
The $492,000 is what you all have access to give for this type of, and also capital improvements is at $98,215. Those were the two line items that Natalie spoke to.
But as far as the actual, having to pay for it as far as it stands now, I think this is a matter of, like we said with the other matter, it comes down to discussions on what you all want to do as a governing body over the courthouse and these facilities and the security therein. The two go hand in hand in a lot of ways. Not that we would have single entries at the other locations, but then as far as the badging is concerned, like I said, I don't know how far my weight goes with that, but I would like to see it in a better environment where the equipment is kept for that. At this moment, is portion of that still exists in the HR department. When it comes to security, I have met with Kenny Sharp. The sheriff directed me to speak to him. We had went over in the 911 dispatch area. They have an area where they have a space that could set behind lock and key and on camera. That was one of the issues I've always had. I would like to see that system have some controls that were not in place. And then the sheriff was discussing having a staff and employee for that, and then having the money in our meeting. I think those are all things that we can, as a group, work those out. I don't know that anybody in any of these meetings has said that, well, it has to be like this, or we need it like that, and we've got to say this to commission and do that. I think this is more of, we're exploring these options here, but as far as on a technical matter, this system is old, and it's not connected to the other parts of the system. And then on top of that, it's some of the buildings don't even have a system, so it is expensive, though, I will say that.
I will add, one of the things that brought this discussion up is that the system here is in the HR office. There is a portion of it in the server room. But the portion that we work from is in the HR office. It's a very antiquated system. God forbid something happen that this building needs to be opened or closed, and I am not on site or one of the coworkers are not on site. It will take me a minimum of 45 minutes to shut this building down. To where if this system is setting with the sheriff's office or in dispatch and they get a call to shut the building down or open the building or do something to a particular door, it will be at their fingertips to do this. It will give this building a more secure environment. That I don't have the manpower, we don't work 24/7, 365 to be able to do that. That's part of what started all of this discussion, and I'll just, quite honest with you, I started having these discussions with prior sheriff as well. So those discussions have been going on for quite a while, knowing that we need it to be available to a department, which handles security and is there all the time to be able to do that. And that's part of where this is coming from. Whether, if we do not move forward with a new system, it's still probably going to end up at the Sheriff's Department. So what we do have can be that ability to be secure.
Let me throw something else in there. One thing we were looking at is how we can save money moving forward with this thought. One thing that David and I had been discussing, we've got enough technical to us that we've went through and looked at how, we're not security system installers. That's not our bailiwick. It's not our cup of tea. But on the electronic side of it, we can see what's there. We can see what's in the roofs. We can see what's run between the walls. And a lot of what's there we can use. It's not do we come in and pull out everything we have and let's start over and buy it all brand new like a brand new car. This is more of we should take this do it smart, use what we already have. And I think that's where, as we kind of try with you all as a blessing, if we can move forward with finding out what this costs, with getting the right numbers in mind. Most of the equipment that's already there, the door strikes, the wiring, in a lot of the instances doesn't have to be replaced. It's the door readers, the actual physical hardware that's presented to you. And then also we have some other, now don't quote me on who it wants it, but there's some departments that are needing something with fingerprints. And then exit buttons, that's the other thing, the green exit now and things like that will open automatic. Some of that stuff we have is so ancient and old, it is literally falling apart. So some of this stuff's going to happen anyway. Now, do we do it piecemeal going forward, or do we do this all at once? That's where, when it comes to the IT, we're trying to figure out where this stands financially as far as what we can present to you, where can we find that savings, and it comes down to reusing what we already have that works great. The hardware, the physical door strikes, the mag locks, most of those plates that are existing now, there's no reason to replace them. So that's where I think if we can work with whoever in the business community that'll give us the bids, that will do that. Now, I'm sure there's some that'll want to, they're only going to use it if they have their new hardware on all the locks and new wires in the walls. Copper's copper. I mean, a conductor's a conductor. If they come to us and say they can't do it, I say they're out. So that's where our thought is on the savings side of it. But I can go on a while about it.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Meade.
I got all kinds of things to say tonight. I'm really in favor of going ahead with something like this, okay? Our system is old, it's antiquated, it needs to be replaced. We need to have a system that is secure and also provides a flexibility. For instance, if we had some kind of a horrible emergency or a fire going off in the building, we would want somebody probably at the dispatcher or whoever monitors the system to be able to unlock the doors so firemen can come in. Yeah. We don't want to restrict the firemen to their front door. Now, we can also have people just run to the door and open the door because they always have to be, they have to be able to open from the inside regardless, okay? But what the badges really do for us, it allows authorized people that have been properly screened, okay, to get into the building all the time. And then go to places they're specifically authorized to go. And then we keep a record of it. Okay, I mean, that's the way it's supposed to work, and those things are all good. And I don't know that our system is that reliable now, and I don't like the fact that our system is still vulnerable to misuse. We've got parts of the system that in areas that are significantly more secure now than they used to be, okay? But still, the system that we want is one that no one person has a way of overriding the system. To open a door or lock doors is just to be. Now, there are people that will lock doors just to cause trouble, and there are other people that will unlock doors to cause trouble. And so we just need to have control of our doors. I like the idea of trying to use, because the magnetic locks work just fine, and you just have to send them the right signal. But I do hope we can find a contractor that'll be willing to take on the conversion probably in association with an ongoing maintenance contract sometimes, because these things do fail from time to time.
The discussions I've had with different vendors in the area to get, try to come up with some of the cost of this, they've, a lot of them actually like that thought. They don't, a couple of them have even said, I don't want to have the idea of having to crawl through some of these corridors up in the ceilings. It's a matter of, if it's already been built, why rebuild it? Those wires are, they're copper. I don't know
if they're the wire under the proper gauge and they're not substantially
Absolutely.
Deteriorated, that the insulation's no good anymore.
The biggest issues we're facing are we took that equipment and we put it behind a nice system. We put it behind a good firewall, knock on wood. We've secured it.
Yeah.
But then you also have the ability, or the fact that system was based on Windows systems that were not even server-based. They're workstation-based on a level where back in the 90s, that was okay. We had proxies before we had firewalls, and those proxy systems that we thought back then, well, nobody's going to behave this way. We're not going to have all of these attacks. We're not going to have, no, it very quickly started, and it's never stopped, and it gets worse every day on the technical merit. There's someone after your system. There's someone trying to get us every single day, whether we know it or not. So as it stands technically, do we want to put up our front against that, or do we stay passive to it? You have already, as a body, went very good as far as locking your systems down. You've employed and spent the money and bought the vendors to pay to put those systems in place. So we should finish it out. That's one little piece of this pie that we've heavily band-aided it. We've secured it. We've got that guard in place, so to speak, digitally. But we're still based upon what we've got around that shield, so to speak, is still a small little, it is what it is that we're protecting, and that system can be a lot better.
So our ask is just simply support for us to move forward with an RFP, to meet with purchasing and move forward.
Do I have a motion?
And that's an RFP for every building, right?
Correct. And what we discussed is doing the RFP to where it'll be quoted per building, so we can actually see what cost is associated with what.
Okay, I'll make a motion to RFP the badge system for the county.
Second.
Commissioner Creasy?
No, he's second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. The last thing that I want to talk, I think I got that to Annette, and she got it out in your packet. It's in regards to a break room for the Anderson County government employees. I met with the director. Her name is Laura Clark with the UT Extension Office or UT Ag Office, 4-H Office, whatever you want to call them. And they were very receptive. And they have a nice kitchen that is connected to their office space that they utilize for any type of cooking classes that they have. They teach diabetic, they still do bacon classes and stuff with 4-H. But it is, whenever I reached out to Annette, she let me know I needed to start the discussions at operations, and commission had to approve the ability for us to be able to share that break room whenever it's not being used for educational purposes.
Yeah, I saw in the letter that was sent out, there's a statement that says, but there are some times because they're holding meetings in the room or training in the room. It didn't discuss how often that was. Is that something that's weekly, or that's something that's every month or two?
They don't have a set schedule. The 4-H, I don't remember when they bake biscuits in 4-H anymore. I think that is an annual thing that we would probably know and be able to list. But even now, they have the ability for us to utilize that kitchen if we just check with their office, and they always open it up for use. They're great to collaborate with and work with.
Okay, I don't see where there's any downside to doing this.
I don't either.
In fact, at what point does someone say, well, you're not allowed to share a lunchroom? I don't know if was there someone that opposed to the other employees using the lunchroom?
I think it's always been just kind of part of what was known as the UT Extension Office portion, and it wasn't open to everyone, and I don't know that anyone's ever addressed it before or asked if we could use it, because not all offices have a break room.
Is there an issue that they feel this could expose them to additional liability because it's being used by a broader
No.
population?
It's still the county building, so no.
Still a county building, we're still responsible for it.
Yes.
I make a motion that we pass the commission recommendation to approve the shared use of the break room.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Commissioner Creasy.
Well, number 9, I just wanted to bring up that I'd like to see us be able to, if we can't get coverage on the regular system for a public hearing or workshops when they're held separate from our regular meetings, that we be able to at least have someone to video the meeting, and so it can be played back over Channel 95.
I think we got an email today from Ryan Sutton. Did you see that one?
No, I haven't been able to access my computer.
We actually got an email from him, and if we'll give him 3 days notice, as long as it does not interfere with something that's already ongoing,
Right.
he'd be more than happy to do it, at least, film it and show it later. So all we need to do is give him 3 days notice.
Okay, sounds good.
I second that, because that's a good idea. I think we need, when we have a special meeting, it's usually because there's something important going on. And those are the things that the public really needs to have access to. And I think there's a lot of people that, as much as I know how much fun some of these meetings are, I think we actually have a fairly big audience for people that they have a specific thing that they want to listen. That may be the only section of the meeting they listen to. And I'm hoping that we do have the agenda on there so they have some idea when that might happen. But as we've proven again tonight, you never know for sure how long the meeting's going to be.
And the other item, we've already discussed that with the help
Are
of...
we going to have a vote on the fact that we should pursue that?
Well, I think, in the email today, he said he would do that.
They're just willing to do it.
Yeah, they're willing to do it, and so I think that's really taken care of.
Maybe the motion would be to thank them for being available.
Good idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, he actually took over for Johanna.
And then item number 10, with the mayor's help, we've already discussed that. And I think we've got a good resolution for that to proceed.
New business.
I just wanted to, I know it's been a long night, so I'll try to be very quick and brief. Back in the summertime, Chairman Wandel had read a newspaper article and asked about payment in lieu of taxes for the Department of Interior. And I sent some emails off to Washington, D.C., and it's been since July and still haven't heard back. But Billy Brown in the property assessor's office was able to get us some really good information, and I wanted to bring that to commission. So out of Commissioner Wandel's request, we don't have, that we have been able to track down, we don't have any Department of Interior payment in lieu of. However, what we do have is the Department of Interior made, you're probably aware because we had public hearings in our county, in Campbell County, for a particular big parcel of land that encompasses Campbell County and Anderson, and that land was designated unsuitable for mining by the Department of Interior. Well, back in 2003, that land is all now owned by the state of Tennessee, and it's managed by the Conservation Fund, is what Mr. Brown has found. And though that property came off of the tax rolls.
Yeah.
Why I am coming to you is he's done some aerial maps, and it looks like we have still ongoing timber operations in these areas. And so he's got a bunch of aerial maps that I will distribute to commission. And the reason, and this is kind of shows like some of the areas that have been timber harvested. So from our county perspective, what he totaled up is, this land was transferred for conservation purposes. And if we do in fact have continuing ongoing timber business, commercial business, the county is getting nothing. And so Mr. Brown tabulated for me what were, if this property were back on the tax roll today, the parcel in Anderson County, what would we be receiving for property tax? He said rounded $114,237 a year. And, I understand it's in the state of Tennessee's possession. TWRA actually manages that land. And I had a lady come to me several years ago. She wanted to do a select cut on her property that she owns in an area that borders this, she shares a boundary. The state of Tennessee told her that she would have to get a current survey to prove her boundary line. She argued that she had a deed that had a deed description, and they said, well, that's how it works. So she couldn't do her timber cut without a survey proving the boundary line. Why I'm coming to you is if you all think, I would like to look into this further, and I would like to work with a commissioner or someone else who would be interested in verifying these operations. And if the state of Tennessee is allowing these commercial enterprises to continue to operate, and these are, as you could see just from what I held up, these are full-scale operations.
Yes.
This is not something
then I think, there's still business ongoing. And I think there is some discussions to be had with the state of Tennessee and see how this connects with the Department of Interior. If the Department of Interior has said it's unsuitable for mining and they have the authority to do that, maybe there is some room there for the payment in lieu of that you were talking about, Chairman Wandell. So.
Commissioner Wandell?
Go ahead.
Commissioner Creasy?
Mayor, I'm very familiar with what you're talking about. I also have some property that borders one of these particular pieces of property that Department of Defense gave some property to the state of Tennessee down in Roane County.
Okay.
And I have in the past had I haven't fought with the TWRA over it, or they manage that property, but the Department of TDEC is actually sort of over the property. But I had some disagreements with them. I didn't fight them in court, and I haven't. But I'm very familiar with it. And and what we may want to do on that is research the original deed. What I found on researching the original deed of this particular property, it's a large, huge piece of property. It's over 1,000 acres. Not mine, but
right.
But the one that was given to the state. It said that it would be used for conservation, bird watching, animal hiking, and those kind of things, period. Well, the state's using them for other reasons, and they say they can do it. I guess they can as long as no one objects. So,
right.
So I sympathize with what you're doing, and I encourage you to continue, but let's go back to the Register of Deeds, and let's look at the very first deed and read it very carefully and see what the covenants are in the deed and what the deed restrictions are.
Okay.
And we can probably I will say that it has nothing to do with timber cutting.
Well, yes, and I'm not an enemy of business by any means, but when land is placed into the state of Tennessee, we understand conservation, and we understand the purpose of that, and we understand being tax exempt in that way. But there are local impacts if we have trucking and logging taking place, and that wasn't the purpose of taking it off the tax roll. So, you know, that is how we fund part of the roads and our schools and all of that. So that's why it's not to be, you know, sideways with the state of Tennessee or with the federal government, but if it's being held in a tax-exempt position, you know, state for us, then I think it's worthy of looking at. That's why I was bringing it up. Yeah.
Tim Shelton could give us that real quick.
Commissioner Wandell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, thank you for following up on that. I started researching DOE, payment in lieu of taxes, and then that kind of led me into this large swath of land in the state of Tennessee that's, I think, 20+ thousand acres. I may be wrong. Maybe it's 13. I can't remember, but it was a large parcel, Mr. Chairman. And what intrigued me is there's several counties in the state of Tennessee that get payment in lieu of taxes from the Department of Interior where these properties are located, and one of the very few that doesn't get payment in lieu of tax from the Department of Interior is good old Anderson County. So I thank you again, Mayor, for taking the lead on it, researching it. That means a lot to me and obviously to the people of this county who pay their taxes, like the lady you spoke of who pays her taxes and then she can't even cut her own trees. And I do not ever think you're against business. I think you're always for business. But I would, Mr. Chairman, like to make a motion to allow the mayor to continue on her research. And I'm not sure who we would like to have set in with her, but you know, I'd be happy, or Commissioner Creasy or whoever would like to join, but I think we should continue on that pace and also still look at the Department of Interior and why is it that Anderson County's not getting these payment in lieu of taxes when everyone else is? Because now I think the mayor's found an additional question, which there's active business being ran on those properties, so we're not getting paid either way. So I make that motion to move forward and have the mayor do that.
Motion, second. Any discussion on the motion? I think actually that you as chairman and vice chairman both should work with the mayor on that myself.
Happy to do so.
Great. And I want to make sure to thank that Mr. Brown did a lot of legwork on this. So.
Is he with the state?
He's with the property assessor's office.
Oh, in
He's
our
the
office?
GIS.
Oh,
yes.
wow. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Billy Brown.
Wow. Yeah. Excellent.
He's the man.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Any old business?
Mr. Chairman, just I think there's been discussion, maybe you're aware of it, and I know the mayor. Do we have any updates on the Glen Alpine facility? I think it's going to be called.
I don't have my calendar. We had a meeting on Solid Waste Advisory Board met on January 9th, I believe that was. If that's a Wednesday, then that's the date they met to review the plans. They are coming back in a meeting, I believe. Mr. Trabalka was working with the members of the board to see, I think the two dates in January, at the end of January, are 24th or 25th. I'll send you all an email. They're going to have a second meeting to review the permit application to TDEC, and then also to review the bid specs that will be posted and distributed. So that's where we are on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. By the way, I'm on the planning commission now, so the other night we had a developer come to us that is with some preliminary plans. It's going to build like 170 homes. And they're going to be targeted to, they're going to be mid-income for, the plants, local plants. And if this works, they're already put a bid on some more property. So in doing this, about a year ago, we was looking at 800 homes would put us to the goal that we want for more rooftops, which would bring more retail. And so that's her goal, is about 800 homes, but we're a fourth of the way there, just off that one developer. Everything's not been approved yet, but, you know, they've already done their plan, so that's good. And I want to commend Chairman Wandale and Vice Chairman Creasy. He did a wonderful job the other night. That's why I wish that, you know, that would have been televised. And Chairman Wandale's doing a great job working with everybody. Good job.
Thank you. I think we all are.
Yeah, I think so.
Would you please state again the new rooftops? How many is it? And where, I mean, you don't have to tell exactly where it's, but proposed where it'll be and how many new homes?
It's proposed around Hines Creek.
Okay.
Okay. 170 maximum in this one subdivision. Now they're looking at doing another subdivision. And now they've already put everything forward. The plans have not been approved yet. And then I know there's some other homes being built. So, you know, if we can get right around 800 concentrated in the, you know, Clinton area, that's going to put us up to where people, because that's the demographics everybody looks at, is how many rooftops and the income.
So when that passes, which committee? The planning? Planning, then does it come before our body, or we'll just get notified that it passed and it's moving forward?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else to come before this committee?
Motion adjourned.
Thank you.
Mayor.